Before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the cultures behind the stories we are about to explore. The tales shared here come from many peoples, lands, and traditions. I do not change these stories to fit modern expectations or to align with today's social standards. Instead, I present them as they were told, sometimes beautiful, sometimes harsh, sometimes challenging. We are not here to judge the past, but to understand it, to listen, to learn, and to honor the ancestors who carried these stories forward. We also share stories from various religious traditions. These are presented in their historical and spiritual context, with respect for their beliefs that they represent. Every culture deserves respect, context, and acknowledgement, and this space is dedicated to doing exactly that. Story 1, Ragnarök, when even the gods must fall. For countless ages, the gods of Asgard held back the forces of chaos, but the Old Norse never believed their victories would last forever. They spoke instead of Ragnarök, the doom of the gods, a day that was not merely the end of a kingdom, but the collapse of an entire world. The signs would begin long before the final battle. A terrible winter called Fimbulvetr would descend upon the earth. 3 bitter winters would follow one another without a single summer between them. Snow would bury the mountains, icy winds would sweep across the seas, crops would fail, and hunger would drive neighbor against neighbor until families turned upon one another in despair. The bonds that held society together would unravel as greed, violence, and betrayal spread across the land. Then the heavens themselves would begin to fail. The wolves, Skoll and Hati, who had chased the sun and moon since the dawn of time, would finally catch their prey, plunging the world into darkness. The earth would tremble so violently the mountains split apart, forests toppled, and the great ash tree, Yggdrasil, shuddered from its deepest roots to its highest branches. From beneath the earth, the monstrous wolf, Fenrir, would break the chains that had bound him for ages. Across the sea sailed the ship, Naglfar, fashioned from the untrimmed fingernails of the dead, carrying giants and enemies toward the battlefield. From the fiery realm of Muspelheim came the blazing giant, Surtur, his flaming sword burning brighter than the sun itself, while Loki, long imprisoned for his betrayals, escaped to stand against the gods he had once called companions. Upon the plain of Vigrithr, the final battle began. Odin rode at the head of the gods only to be swallowed by Fenrir, while Odin's son, Vithur, avenged his father by tearing the monstrous wolf apart. Thor struck down the great serpent, Jormungandr, but staggered only 9 steps before falling to its deadly venom. Freyr, lacking the enchanted sword he had once given away, fell before Surtur, whose flames soon spread across heaven and earth until the entire world was consumed in fire. Yet the Norse did not end the story there. When the flames finally died, the sea slowly receded, revealing a new green earth rising fresh from the waters. Fields bore grain without being planted. A surviving daughter of the sun crossed the heavens with even greater brilliance than her mother before her. A handful of gods returned, and 2 humans, Leif and Leifthrossir, emerged from the shelter of Hodmimi's Holt to begin humanity anew. From the Norse, even the fall of the gods was not the end of hope. Every ending carried within it the first breath of another age. Story 2, Kali Yuga, the Age of Darkness. The ancient sages of India believed that time does not move in a straight line. Instead, it turns like the great wheel of the cosmos through immense cycles known as yugas, each lasting far longer than entire civilizations. In the beginning came Satya Yuga, the Age of Truth, when humanity lived in harmony with the divine, and Dharma, the sacred order of righteousness, stood firmly upon 4 strong pillars. As the ages passed, however, each new era lost a measure of that balance. Treta Yuga saw virtue begin to diminish. Dwapara Yuga brought increasing conflict and uncertainty. Then, with the departure of Krishna from the earth, the 4th and final age began. Kali Yuga, not named after the goddess Kali, but after the spirit of discord and moral decay known as Kali. The old scriptures described this era as a time when truth becomes difficult to recognize and appearances are often mistaken for wisdom. Wealth is valued above character, power is mistaken for righteousness. Leaders seek their own gain instead of serving their people. Families drift apart, promises are easily broken, and knowledge is pursued without understanding. Rivers become polluted, forests disappear, and the natural world suffers alongside humanity. Even spiritual life becomes clouded as empty rituals replace sincere devotion, and many forget the deeper purpose that once guided their ancestors. Yet the sages never intended these prophecies to inspire despair. Rather, they taught that virtue shines brightest when surrounded by darkness. A single act of kindness becomes more precious in an age of selfishness. One honest voice carries greater weight in a world filled with deception. One person choosing compassion can become a light for countless others. The scriptures explain that while Dharma once stood firmly upon 4 legs, in Kali Yuga it balances upon only one. Though weakened, it has not disappeared. The responsibility for preserving it now rests more heavily upon every individual. The great epics remind humanity that even in the most troubled times, the divine has never abandoned the world. At the end of Kali Yuga, when the age has fully exhausted itself and righteousness has nearly vanished, Vishnu is foretold to return in his final earthly incarnation as Kalki, riding a white horse and carrying a blazing sword. His arrival does not simply destroy the old world, it clears away corruption so that the wheel of time may turn once more, beginning a new Satya Yuga where truth, harmony, and justice are restored. For countless generations, this teaching has reminded people that no season of darkness lasts forever. Even when an age seems broken beyond repair, the universe itself continues to move toward renewal. Every ending is simply the final turning of one great wheel before another begins. Story 3: The 5 Suns and the Worlds That Came Before. The ancient Meshika people looked upon the world with a remarkable conviction. This was not the first creation. Before the mountains stood where they are now, before humanity walked the earth, and before the sun rose above the Valley of Mexico, 4 entire worlds had already lived, flourished, and come to an end. Each was known as a sun, an age ruled by its own divine order, and each eventually collapsed beneath the weight of catastrophe. The first sun belonged to Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, under whose sky giants wandered the earth. But pride and rivalry among the gods shattered that age, and the people were devoured by mighty jaguars until the world itself fell silent. The second sun belonged to Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, whose gentle winds gave life to another humanity. Yet fierce hurricanes swept across the land, tearing mountains apart and transforming the people into monkeys so they clung helplessly to the trees. The third sun arrived beneath Tlaloc, lord of rain and fertile earth, but divine anger brought not life-giving showers but fire from the heavens. Burning stones rained upon the forests and valleys until the world was consumed in flames. And those who survived became birds, fleeing through smoke-filled skies. Then came the fourth sun, ruled by Chalchi Utlique, the radiant goddess of lakes and flowing waters. Her age ended when the skies opened without restraint. Endless floods swallowed villages, forests, and mountains alike until the earth disappeared beneath the vast sea, and humanity was transformed into fish to survive the waters that covered everything. 4 worlds had risen, 4 worlds had fallen. Still, the gods refused to abandon creation. At the sacred city of Teotihuacan, they gathered around a great fire to decide who would become the next sun and restore light to the empty heavens. The wealthy god, Tekusis Tecatl, proudly expected the honor, while the humble and disease-scarred Nanahuatzin quietly stood beside him. When the time came to leap into the blazing fire, Tekusis Tecatl hesitated again and again, fearful of the flames. Without seeking glory, Nanahuatzin closed his eyes and threw himself into the sacred fire, emerging transformed into the brilliant new sun. Ashamed, Tekusis Tecatl followed, becoming a second shining light until the gods dimmed his radiance, leaving him as the moon. Yet even the new sun refused to move across the sky until the other gods willingly sacrificed themselves, offering their own lives so creation could continue. Only then did the fifth sun begin its journey, bringing light once more to the world that humanity now inhabits. To the Aztecs, this was not merely a story of destruction. It was a reminder that every age eventually reaches its end. Yet creation itself continues through sacrifice, courage, and the willingness to begin again after everything has been lost. Story 4. The End of the Golden Age. The ancient Greeks believed that humanity had not always lived as it does today. Long before kingdoms fought for power, before walls surrounded cities, and before people measured wealth in gold or silver, there existed a time remembered simply as the Golden Age. It was an era ruled by the Titan Cronus, when the earth gave freely of its abundance and life unfolded in effortless harmony. The fields yielded grain without the touch of a plow, fruit hung heavy upon every tree, rivers ran clear through untouched valleys, and flowers covered the hillsides in every season. No one feared hunger because the land itself provided more than enough. There were no kings demanding tribute, no soldiers marching to war, no prisons, no judges, and no need for laws, for people naturally chose kindness over cruelty and generosity over greed. Old age came gently, without pain or suffering, and when life's journey reached its quiet end, death arrived like a peaceful sleep beneath the warm embrace of the earth. The spirits of those who passed became benevolent guardians, watching over future generations unseen. Yet no earthly age remains forever. When Zeus defeated Cronus and established the reign of the Olympian gods, the great harmony of the Golden Age slowly faded into memory. According to the poet Hesiod, humanity entered the Silver Age, where people became foolish, prideful, and slow to honor the gods. After that came the Bronze Age, an age consumed by violence, where weapons mattered more than wisdom and war became the language of nations. A brief heroic age followed, producing legendary figures whose deeds would echo through epics and songs before giving way to the final era, the Iron Age, the age in which Hesiod believed he himself was living. In this last age, honesty grew difficult to find. Promises were easily broken, neighbors distrusted one another, children forgot to honor their parents, and justice was often sold to the highest bidder. Labor became exhausting, harvests uncertain, and sorrow mingled with even life's greatest joys. Watching these changes, the Greeks did not simply mourn the paradise they believed had been lost. They used the memory of the Golden Age as a mirror, asking themselves how far humanity had drifted from the virtues that once defined it. Every act of compassion became an echo of that forgotten world. Every just ruler, faithful friend, generous stranger, and truthful word reflected a small piece of that age that had vanished. Though perfection had passed beyond reach, its memory remained alive within the hearts of those who still longed for it. In that longing lived hope. For if people could remember what harmony looked like, perhaps they could choose to carry fragments of it into every generation that followed. The Golden Age had ended, but its light had never completely disappeared. It survived wherever goodness was freely given, reminding humanity that even after an age has fallen, its greatest virtues can still endure. Daily Thread for July 29th. One of the greatest differences between the ancient world and our own is that the ancients rarely believed history was a straight road. They saw time as a series of great ages, each with its own purpose, each carrying the seeds of its own ending. To the Norse, even the mighty gods could not escape Ragnarök, for courage was measured not by avoiding fate, but by meeting it with honor. In India, Kali Yuga teaches that civilizations can slowly lose their moral center, not through one catastrophic moment, but through countless small compromises that accumulate across generations. Meshika remembered that 4 entire worlds had already risen and fallen before humanity entered the 5th sun, proving that creation itself is resilient enough to begin again after unimaginable destruction. And the Greeks looked back upon the Golden Age, not to dwell in hopeless nostalgia, but to remember the virtues that made such an age possible in the first place. Together, these stories ask a question that feels just as urgent today as it did thousands of years ago. How do worlds truly end? Sometimes they fall in fire and battle. Sometimes they disappear so gradually that no one notices until they are gone. An empire crumbles, a family tradition quietly fades, friendship reaches its final conversation. A career, a season of childhood, a chapter of grief, even an old version of ourselves eventually comes to its close. We often resist these endings because they feel like failure, yet the wisdom carried by these ancient traditions offers another perspective. Endings are woven into the design of creation itself. Forests burn so new growth can emerge. Rivers carve away stone to make room for new valleys. Autumn releases its leaves not because the tree has died, but because spring is already hidden within its future. The question is not whether an age will end. Every age does. The deeper question is whether we will carry forward the wisdom it gave us. Ragnarök leaves behind hope. Kali Yuga promises renewal beyond decline. The fifth sun rises because sacrifice made another world possible. The memory of the Golden Age reminds us that goodness never truly disappears, so long as someone chooses to live it. Perhaps the era ending in your own life is not asking to be rescued. Perhaps it is asking to be honored for everything it taught you before you step forward into whatever comes next. Every ending closes a door, but somewhere beyond it, another dawn is already waiting, patient and unseen, preparing to become the next story.